What's up everybody, it's Parker with BI Elite. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to connect to a ton of historical crypto price data within Power BI. This method is fast and simple, it's also free. We're going to be connecting to the CryptoWatch API through Power BI, so you'll be able to bring in all that data and interact with it and visualize it however you want. If you're just looking to get your hands on the data or this PBX file to refresh and grab new data, you can skip this video and just look at the download links down in the description. You'll be able to run this whenever you want because, like I said, it's free. You don't even have to be authenticated, but we'll get into the authentication later as well if you do want to be authenticated. And with that, we're just going to dive in and I'm going to teach you how to pull all this data. Before we get into the demo, if you like this content, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It really helps me out as a content creator. And let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here. So it's a very basic dashboard as of right now because the main purpose of this video is going to be bringing in the data, connecting to that API, loading the data into the file, and then you can choose whatever you do with this data. But right now we have several pairs here. For example, if we want to look at Bitcoin data, we can choose BTC USD. So that's the Bitcoin USD pair. I've chosen to select just a handful of USD pairs. We'll also talk about how you can get way more pairs than this. So if we look at Bitcoin, we also have the ability to select a period. For example, if I want to look at where every single point is a single day of data, we can do that. So this data is going all the way back to what looks like 2015 up until today. If we want to look at it from an hour scale, we'll see a much smaller subset of data, but much more granular as well. Right now I've chosen just to view as a simple line chart. But later on in the video, I'll also show you how to create a candlestick chart like you would expect for most charts of crypto price data. And I think that's about it for a demo. This is really flexible in that you can choose whichever pairs you want, and this data can come from whichever market you want. For example, I'm located in New York City, so I only have access to Coinbase Pro and Gemini. So I've chosen to just pull in Coinbase Pro market data. If you live in a different part of the world, you can choose from a bunch of different exchanges. But for now, for this demo, we're going to talk about Coinbase Pro. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into how to set this up from a technical standpoint. So here we are in a new Power BI report. If you're not an avid user of Power BI, Power BI is a free software that allows you to connect to data, load that data, transform the data, and then finally visualize that data. It's a free software from Microsoft. If you do want to download it, you can just go to the Microsoft Store, search for Power BI, install it, completely free. In the desktop client will just kind of be this free tool that you can use to do all those things I just mentioned. So from Power BI Desktop, the first step, well, actually, before we actually do anything in Power BI, I'm going to show you the API we're going to connect to. It comes from CryptoWatch. It's actually cryptowat.ch, so CryptoWatch. And we're pulling from their REST API, which again is free to a point. It'll get you a ton of data on their free tier, more than you'll probably need, but you can authenticate and get more data if you choose to do that. So this one API endpoint is actually what we need. It's this OHLC, which stands for Open High Low Close candlesticks. So we're going to connect to the API in this fashion here. So if you actually want to test this out, you can just copy this request URL. Actually, I don't actually think I can copy that. So if we just type that in, so API.CryptoWatch/markets, let's actually just kind of recreate it. So API.CryptoWatch/markets/ this exchange is going to be whichever exchange you want. This pair is going to be whichever pair you want. Then finally /OHLC. So knowing that, we have API CryptoWatch/markets/ Coinbase-Pro/ BTC USD /OHLC, and that'll get us a ton of data. Again, if you want to use a different exchange, just change this to, for example, Kraken. Now I have the Kraken data, but again, I just want Coinbase Pro. So Coinbase-Pro. If you want a list of all the exchanges, they have an endpoint for that, but we're probably not going to cover that in this video. I'm getting all the Bitcoin USD data. So actually, in order to bring this into Power BI, just copy that guy, come back to Power BI, get data, and go to the web connector, and let's paste this in. And If you're doing this for the first time, it's going to ask you how you want to connect. Just leave it on the anonymous option. Since you don't actually have to connect, as in you can see if I open up a incognito tab and I paste this in, it's going to give me the data. It doesn't take any authentication to get this data. So yeah, in Power BI, it's the exact same way. You can leave it as anonymous and you're going to bring in a ton of data. From here, I'm going to walk you through a lot of steps in order to structure this in a way that you can then visualize. Because right now, as you can see, this doesn't look like much. It's just kind of a horizontal list of columns with no actual data. So I'm going to show you how you can shape it and turn it into something you can report off of. At this point, this is about to get pretty technical. So again, if you do just want to download the Power BI file with the data already loaded, you can do so. But for now, let's go ahead and dive into the more technical things. So as you can see right here, these columns, they kind of have result and a dot and then a number. This number stands for the period of each like value that's going to come at you. So for example, 180. I guess the best way to visualize this would be on the documentation. Down below, there's a table. So for 180, that means every string of values is going to have the time period of 3 minutes. So if you have a close price, that's the 3-minute closing price. Similarly, this 8640 is the 1 day. So each individual close value is going to be the close value for that day. And they get this number because it's the number of seconds within the period. So 60 seconds is a minute, 180 seconds is 3 minutes, and so on. So if we come to Power BI, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the columns at the end, these allowances. I'm going to remove the other columns, but firstly, these allowance columns are just showing you how much data you can actually pull. They give you a free allowance to pull data, and you can see you start with 10, and I've already used a fraction of that. Each time you call this API, you're going to take up 0.015 credits. So really, I've been running this all day. And I really just still have all of my allowance remaining. If you do want to sign up for a free account, you actually get like 250 credits off the bat. So I can't imagine you ever run out of allowance, honestly. And if you need to pull it an ungodly amount of times, I believe it's actually pretty cheap as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and remove other columns. So now we just have our result columns, just each individual period, and they all have data beneath them. So from here, I'm going to Control A and transform this data. I'm going to unpivot these columns. So now it turns all of my results into basically just a vertical format. So now, firstly, I want to get rid of the result there. We can do that by just replacing the values. So instead of result period, I'm going to replace that with nothing. So now I just have my period here. And then I'm going to expand the lists of values. I'm going to extract these values and separate them by a comma. So those last two steps are basically just turning the actual result into some better kind of format. And then finally, you can see what comes through in this column now. It's a string of like 7 values separated by a comma. And this first one is going to be the time of that period. The next one is going to be the open price, and the high price, low price, close price. We also have volume in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this column, split it out by a comma, or say the delimiter to split on is a comma. And then we have all these values, and it's in a nice reportable format already. But again, we don't need all of these. If you look at the documentation, you see that this is the returns, like I was just saying. So I actually only really care about the first 6. I don't care about quote volume. So one thing you also might notice is this first one, this first time period, this close time, doesn't really mean much because that is a Unix timestamp. We can put this in a human readable date time if we like to. It's very easy to do. I have a video on that, but let's go ahead and just do it quickly. We'll create a custom column. This is going to be called datetime. Or sorry, getting ahead of myself. It's going to be called datetime, and the formula for it is hash datetime 1970 11000. It's basically saying simulate a date starting on the 1st of January 1970 plus hash duration. And that's going to be, we're going to add 0 days, 0 hours, 0 minutes, but the number of seconds we're adding is that value 1 column. I know it's a lot to digest. I will link the video talking about that down below. for now I'm just going to leave it there, and we have our date time column. So that's basically the close time of the period in question. So now let's get rid of some columns because it's a little bit messy. So I'm going to keep my attribute, I'm going to keep my date time, and I don't need value 1 anymore because we converted that to a better format. I'm going to keep value 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I don't want 7 either because I don't really know what quote volume is. So I have my values here. We can rename this if we want. So this was the open price. This was the high price. Sorry. Is it? Let's see what it is. It's open, high, low, close volume. So open, high, low, close, and volume. And last step here, I'm going to Control A, highlight all my columns, transform, detect data type. So now I have all my data types nice. One thing you're going to notice is it's actually going to want to convert this to a number because it looks like a number. But there is one value in here that is not a number. It's going to cause some errors. So we do actually want this to be a text type. So let's just do that quickly. And we're done. This is our Bitcoin data. Let's go ahead and load that in. One thing you'll notice is it's extremely quick. It's going to load that in a few seconds max. And yeah, it's all loaded. So now all you have to do is start to visualize it. So let's go ahead and make a nice line chart. I'm going to take the average of the close price. So let's make sure that's on average. And throw in date time on the axis. And that's a lot of data right there. That's looking pretty good. The only way to ensure that this is correct is to create a slicer. Because as you might expect, we're going to have a lot of data that is duplicated for the various time periods. So if I take our attribute, which is actually that period, we throw it in a slicer. If we just want to see, the 180 second or 3-minute period, we can do that. This is what it looks like on a 3-minute period. Each individual data point is a 3-minute period. This is how Bitcoin has looked over the last few days. If I want to look at, I forgot what the day was, 3600 is by hour. So this is looking on an hourly view of how Bitcoin has closed. So again, take this, run with it. If you just want to look at Bitcoin data, you can analyze it as much as you want. We're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're going to talk about how to get multiple pairs. I'm going to show you how you can get every single pair from a certain exchange instead of just Bitcoin data. Before we do that though, I also want to add a step here. Since it's a little bit confusing to click on an attribute and know like, hey, 3600 is looking at it on an hourly scale, I'm going to show you how we can just put that into like a human readable format. So on this page here, this API page, this endpoint page we've been talking about, this table here provides us a nice way to tie together those values to their labels. So we can actually just take this URL and go to Power BI, go to Get Data, Web again, and let's paste this in. And one thing you're going to notice right off the bat is Power BI doesn't do a good job of picking up that table for whatever reason. I'm not completely sure why. If it's an HTML table, usually it picks it up, but we'll see once it loads that table 1, that's not what we want. Table 2, that's not what we want. So the easy way to get it actually is by using this add table using examples option. And like it says, you just add examples and it'll eventually figure it out. So the first value in this table is called value. So we're going to paste that in. The next one was called label. Label. And the next one, let's give it a couple more values. So 60 and 1M. So 60. Oh, you see it's already auto-populating the rest. 1M. And it auto-populated the rest. And there's our entire table. So now we can click OK. And this is going to give us our periods. I'm on the wrong file here. Let me go back to the other one. So there's our custom table called table 3. Let's go ahead and, if it looks weird, it's because it's not actually selected. There it is. So I'm going to transform this guy. So it'll take us back to Power Query. And firstly, I'm going to call this periods. That's our periods, and value and label need to be our column headers, so use first row as headers. And that's everything we need, actually. That looks perfect. So now when we come back to, I just realized I skipped one step, but we'll come back to it. So if we load that in, we now have it in our model. If we come to our modeling view, instead of showing these attributes, let's actually make a connection between the value of our periods table and the attribute of our original one. And instead of this attribute, we can use the period label. And as you can see, if we choose 2 hour, now we're looking at 2 hour, or 1 week, now we're looking at 1 week. The one thing I forgot to do is order these correctly. And the way you would order it correctly is you would come here in Power Query, and I want it to follow this exact same order. When we load it into Power BI, it's going to be alphabetical, but I want to follow this exact order. So let's add a column. Let's add an index column starting from 1, and that's all we need. And now in our Power BI data view, so this option over here, once that loads in, we're going to go to periods and label. We're going to sort by index. Now in our visual, it's sorted the way we want: 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute, and so on. And that's looking really good. Again, we only have Bitcoin data, but it's, just nicely visualized at this point. Or, we're doing a couple extra steps here. Instead of label, I'm just going to call this period. And I also want this to be a single select because I only ever want to show one period at a time. So we have to select a period now. So now let's generalize this so that we can pull every single coin from the Coinbase Pro exchange. So yeah, let's go ahead and go back to Power Query. So before we actually do anything here, let's take a look at the documentation. What we want to look at is in the market section. Let's look at list, or actually details. So if we look here, we can search for markets in the specific exchange and then the pair for the details. But if we actually don't provide a pair, it's going to give us all the pairs. So I've copied this to my clipboard. So if we search for the endpoint markets, Coinbase Pro again, that's going to give us all of the pairs. So Bitcoin to Euro, Bitcoin to Great British Pound, Great Britain, yeah. And basically, we're just going to load this in and give us all the pairs we need. So let's go to web and paste in that URL again. And it's going to load in our data quickly. So again, we're going to go through a few steps to, actually it's kind of already done all the steps we need to get all the good data in. I'm going to right click on the pair column, that's the one I need. Remove other, so we just have that one column. One thing though is I only care about USD pairs. I do not care about Euro pairs. I don't care about even the Bitcoin pairs. So I'm actually going to create a new column, custom column. And I'm going to call this is USD question mark. Basically going to say if our text dot ends with, so it's a function that says if this text ends with a certain text, return something. So if our result.pair column, oh, I got a little issue here. If our result.pair column ends with USD, then I'm just going to give it a 1, else I'll give it a 0. So if we did that correctly, we're going to have 1s where it ends with USD, 0s where it doesn't end with USD. Then we can quickly and easily filter for our 1s. So these are all of the USD pairs. There are 122. We could go ahead and use all these. I'm only going to take, let's say, the top 20 just to keep this pretty short for the video. So I'm going to keep rows, keep top 20. So these are going to be the top 20 pairs. I guess they're ordered by market cap or total volume because it starts with Bitcoin, then Ethereum, then Litecoin. Makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to call this query pairs. And the last thing here, in order to use all of these pairs in the endpoint that's going to pull all of our relevant price data, we have to make this into a function that is going to take those pairs and run that query. So we do that by taking our big ol' query here, and it's going to take a pair parameter as text. So that's saying that pair parameter is a text parameter that we're going to pass in. And instead of hard coding in BTC USD, we can supply the pair to make it dynamic. Yeah, so you can see that I kind of cut this into separate text. So it's this first piece here, then and pair and then a second piece of text. And I just realized I have an extra space in there. So yeah, that turns it into a function. One quick thing for the really technical people here, the way we set this up, this actually probably won't be refreshable in Power BI Service because this is creating kind of a dynamic URL string. If you do want this to be fully refreshable online, you'll have to use like the relative path function of web.contents. But that's maybe a video for another time. If enough people comment down below saying they need this to be refreshable on Power BI Service, I will make a quick video showing how to alter this to make it do so. So yeah, that's about it. So once we click that, I'm going to rename this to get price data, something like that. And now, if we take our pairs here, these are all of our pairs. I'm going to quickly duplicate this pairs, and I'm going to call this new query data. And again, for the technical people, I am duplicating this, not referencing it, because I'm about to call another web source, and you cannot mix and match web queries. So I'm duplicating this one so we don't have a firewall issue. But I digress. So I'm going to remove other columns here, and I'm going to rename this to pair. Actually, yeah, I'll just rename it to pair. And then I'm going to add a column, invoke custom function, and I'm going to call our get price data function on every single pair. So let's click OK. And now we have our tables of data, a ton of data. Click OK again. And yeah, that's looking really good. Last thing, I guess I want to detect the data types of all the columns. Again, attribute needs to be text. And we're pretty much there. I'm going to load that in and just recreate some relationships. So again, that's loading in a ton of data, and you'll see it'll load within seconds. You know, it's I'm going through a VPN that's slowing my internet, and it's still very, very fast. And there we go. So that broke everything because my relationships are messed up. My data is gone now. So I'm going to remake these. So with our new data, I'm going to throw in our close, average of close, throw in our date time. So we're good there. Kind of looks wonky when we don't have everything selected. So let's recreate these relationships. So data and pairs, those are already matching up. So we do want those columns to create a relationship between the pairs table and the data table. We also want our value to match up with the attribute of the data table like we did earlier. And now let's copy and paste this slicer, and I'm going to make this top one a pair slicer. All right, and we're good. So right now it's looking at Algorand. If I want something else like basic attention token, now we're looking at the basic attention token close price data on a 1 hour scale. So it goes all the way back to October 12th. So that's about a month and a half of data. Yeah, that's it. And the cool thing is we can refresh this as many times as we want to get more refreshed and newer data. Two more things, and I think we'll be done for this video. One, if you would rather candle visualization, candlestick visualizations instead of simple line charts, you can get a custom visual by searching for candle. And there's two here. The second one doesn't seem to work for me, so I'm going to select this candlestick by OKViz. Get it now, add it to our file. This has pros and cons. It's nice candlestick, representation, but it also kind of, the format isn't great sometimes. So if we throw in just the relevant information, like open, it needs close, it needs high and low. So as you can see, it's formatted a little bit weird because it doesn't scale based on the view. So it's going to put everything in view. So if we have like a large swing, it's just going to make it really small. So for that reason, I'm going to stick with a line chart, but just thought I'd throw that in there in case you need it. So now we actually don't need all these. So I'm going to get rid of those. And yeah, there we go. So like I've said several times in this video, this is all free to do, but it is a good idea to keep an eye on your allowance in case you do run into an issue where you are just starting to run out of free allowance. So you can find that on any of your API calls that's going to return an allowance. And for example, when we search for those pairs, at the very end, there's this allowance column. So I'm actually going to leave that in our pairs table just for lack of anywhere else. So allowance remaining, 7.875. And I'm just gonna load that in, just that one column. So once that loads in, I'm just gonna throw in a card up here. That's that allowance. But specifically, I'm going to throw in, not count, but just average, minimum, maximum, doesn't matter. They'll all be the same value. So I have 6.88 allowance credits left. So yeah, if I were to, firstly, I'm gonna show like 4 decimal places, just, picky things here. So if I refresh as many times as I want, I'm gonna see that allowance go down. But again, it's still a lot of allowance. One issue is it might actually be looking at the allowance for one of the first queries that I sent. The last query that probably just ran many times to get the data probably happened after I pulled this allowance, so that's not perfect. But if I refresh again, I'll get my most recent allowance value that this should now have dropped a lot. I'm not really gonna care too much about that, but I just wanted to add that in there. Yeah, so that's dropped. So right now I'm still over half of my allowance left. I'm pulling a ton of data for 20 different tokens. Again, if you do need more credits, simply go to CryptoWatch. I'm gonna go to CryptoWatch.com, or CryptoWatch as it is. And you can see up at the top, I have 260 credits left, so plenty of credits. We can search under the accounts, credits and billing. I have so many free credits. So you set up an account, you get 250 free credits. Once you make your first API call, you actually get 10 more free credits because they just give you a little achievement. And you can see I've used this many credits. Don't be confused. What I'm doing, what we've done in this video, that was used with an anonymous connection to that API. If you do want to pass in your credentials, which I'm not doing in this video, that's where you start to use this. So if you are interested in another video showing how to authenticate, or actually pass in your authentication, your API key, in order to pull even more data, let me know again in the comments below. I will be happy to make that video. It'll be a quick one. But with that is how you pull in all this historical crypto price data within Power BI. I also plan on doing a video on how to pull this in with Python as well, because Power BI is great because it allows you to quickly analyze and visualize your data. But Python is also great because you can use it in several other applications. You can then perform machine learning and data science operations on that data set using pandas and all the other out-of-the-box Python packages to actually perform that analysis. With that, that's about it from me. Hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button if you like, and I'll see you in the next one.